All right, guys, Doc May Diet, episode number 4. I'm your host, Dr. Brian May. Welcome back. Podcast is now up on Spotify. Psyched about that. That feels like a real deal now. All right, guys. So today we're talking about top 5 problems with intermittent fasting. All right. We're going to talk about fasting a little bit in general. And then at the end, I'm going to make a case for doing fasting. I actually believe it does have some real utility in terms of health benefits for you guys. Okay. So fasting right now, one of the most popular trends on the internet, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you may be. People are claiming it's the panacea to all health issues. Some people are saying it's utter nonsense. Now, fasting has actually been around as long as humans have. So back in the day, hunter and gatherer ancestors, we didn't have access to food. We didn't have these big grocery stores, refrigerators, cupboards, pantries with food ready to go at all times of the day. That was a foreign thing. If you took a caveman, put him in today's world, he'd probably gain like 300 pounds and die because he is not used to all this food being around. So he would go, cavemen, our hunter-gatherer ancestors would go days sometimes without food. And that's normal, okay? So fasting, when I started fasting, people were looking at me like I was crazy. 3 heads, what, you're just not going to eat? You're going to die, you nuts? No, actually, you can go a pretty long time without fasting, or without food, sorry. So the most popular diet today in terms of fasting would have to be intermittent fasting. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a second. But in addition to, our ancestors fasting all the time, even some religions to this day practice fasting. Today is actually the last day of Ramadan for those of the Muslim faith. What they do, their fasting protocol is to not eat while the sun's up. So they could eat before the sun rises and then once it sets, but you can't eat in between. So they've done studies on people during Ramadan, and all their health markers improve because of this fasting that they're doing, okay? So fasting does have some real benefit, all right? So like I said, the most popular version today has to be the intermittent fasting. What that is just choosing a window to eat, okay? Typically, most commonly, people choose somewhere around afternoon, early or late morning, and then an early evening window to eat, okay? So usually about 8 hours, people will eat from noon, say, to about 8 or 11 to 7. Basically, they're just skipping breakfast, okay? And breakfast, what does that mean? Breakfast means to break fast. So really what they're doing is they're just pushing their breakfast back later into the day, breaking their fast at, say, 11 or noon, as opposed to the normal time, which is around 7:30, 8, 8:30, 9, what have you, depending on when you wake up, okay? Now, the other version of fasting is simply known as fasting, which is an extended fast or a prolonged fast, fasting from anywhere between 24, 48, 72 hours, even longer in some cases. I've done some pretty extreme fasts. I've done a 3-hour or a 3-day and a 5-day. I don't recommend them. They're not easy. And not only are they not easy, but most people aren't willing to do that. So we're going to focus on intermittent fasting tonight, otherwise known as IF. Okay? All right. So to start off, we're going to do the top 5 problems with IF. Problem number 1 is that it just creates a lot of stress for people. Some people can't handle it, okay? High stress, high anxiety, high emotion individuals are not going to do good with intermittent fasting, okay? If you have a schedule that's up and down, don't know when you're going to be getting home, don't know when you're going to be leaving the house, traveling a lot, it's not going to work, all right? But if you're a high-functioning, high-level CEO and, type A, you could probably handle it. You got your schedule down pat. You could probably do well, but not for the high-stress, high-anxiety individuals, okay? I actually remember I had a patient who was trying to do it, all right? We're working on her weight loss. She was doing good and was feeling, confident. I was like, all right, let's try this intermittent fasting stuff. So we tried it. Didn't work, all right? She had a pretty busy job. She was there late, and she was trying to get home by, I think, like 7:30, 8 p.m. to get her last meal inside of her window. And she was rushing out of the office, running like every red light on the way home, running to the kitchen. Her family's looking at her like she's crazy, all for the sake of getting it within her window, her eating window. Didn't make sense. Created more stress, created more inflammation. That's the exact opposite of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to reduce inflammation, not boost it by creating stress, okay? So that's problem number 1. It creates too much stress for a lot of people. Problem number 2 with intermittent fasting is that people think it's a license to eat whatever the heck they want as long as they eat within their window. That's a bunch of BS. I remember I saw an ad, I think it was on Facebook or Instagram, of some big juiced up bodybuilder guys saying, bro, you could eat whatever you want as long as it's within your window. It doesn't matter. Nonsense, okay? Logically, you know that's not true, but people get a little carried away, all right? Food quality matters. Food quantity still matters. I don't care if you're eating 2,000 calories normally, that's better than eating 4,000 calories in a 6-hour or 8-hour window. Doesn't make any sense. You're still eating more, so you're still going to gain weight. You got to kind of eat the same, or maybe you need less, and that way you could continue to lose the weight, all right? That's not really what this diet is intended towards. It's not a license to eat whatever the heck you want, okay? Problem number 3 is that there are some bad side effects that begin when you start to do fasting, okay? So I don't recommend starting this protocol during a particularly busy day or a busy week at work, a big project, a big test or exam or project coming up at school. You got to be on your A game for that stuff. And when you start fasting, you're not going to be on your A game sometimes. You're going to be tired. You're going to be fatigued. You're going to have poor memory, poor concentration, and you're not going to be on your A game, okay? So be aware of that. That could be a potential issue. If you start this during a busy time, it could suffer. It could have long-term consequences, whether it's a job or school. So make sure that we pick a week where, you have some easy stuff. The schedule isn't too packed. You want to be busy enough so you're not just laying around thinking about how bad you want to eat all day, but you can't be too busy because there could be a crash that comes within the first 2, maybe even 3 weeks of trying this, okay? Now, problem number 4 with intermittent fasting, not meant for everybody, okay? There's certain special populations actually should not do it. Listen up. If you are one of these people, please don't. If you are pregnant, plan on getting pregnant, you're breastfeeding, you're taking certain medications like blood thinners, birth controls, antidepressants, you have a history of traumatic brain injury, or you're immunosuppressed, please do not do this, okay? Disclaimer, do not do this if you're in one of those populations. It will not be safe for you, okay? And then problem number 5 with intermittent fasting is that typical 12 to 8 eating window isn't all it's cracked up to be. Why is that? Well, reason number 1 is that even though you're only eating in that 8-hour window, doesn't necessarily mean you're fasting that whole time. You still digest an hour or 2 after you eat, okay? So if you stop eating at 8, you're still digesting at 9 and a little bit at 10. And you always want to eat at least 3 hours before bedtime. So if you have too late of a window, you're not going to be able to get that last meal in an appropriate amount of time. The other problem with that is that you want to have as many fasting hours outside of your window. You want to have as many of those hours be as active as you can. If you're spending a lot of those hours sleeping, you're not going to get as many of the benefits. You'll still get some, but it's not going to be as good, okay? So try and arrange it so a lot of the hours of the fast you're actually up, moving around, working. So for example, I start work at 7 a.m. on Friday. I typically will not be able to work out till about 3:30. So I won't have my first meal until about 1 o'clock those days. So I'm fasting I wake up at like 5:45 to 1, and I'm working through that whole time. That's a lot of working hours, okay? You don't want to have a lot of your fasting hours be sleep because you're not going to burn as much. So take advantage of this. Really get this technique. If you're going to do it the right way and spend a lot of those hours fasting, and also have your last meal about 3 hours before bedtime so you can actually digest properly and get a full night's sleep. All right? So those are the top 5 problems with intermittent fasting. Number 1, not good for high stress individuals, can create more stress than it actually deletes. Number 2, obviously, like we said, you can't eat whatever you want during that window. Number 3, when you first start, you're going to have some negative side effects. Number 4, not meant for everybody, okay? Special populations should not do this. And number 5, that 12 to 8 typical window isn't all it's cracked up to be. Okay, so those are the top 5 problems with intermittent fasting. Now let's make a case to do it, all right? So the number 1 reason, the best reason, if you're listening to this podcast, why you want to do intermittent fasting is it's going to help you lose weight. I'm sure that's why a lot of you are listening, because you actually want to lose some weight and improve your health, right? So let's talk about how fasting can do that. So fasting can help lose weight because it increases sensitivity to insulin. Now, why is that important? Well, insulin sensitivity is going to help you assimilate and digest your meals better, especially carbohydrates. So not only is this good to lose weight for everybody, but it's really important for those who are diabetic. because they have lost their sensitivity to insulin. Most type 2 diabetes can be reversed through diet. I've seen it. I've had clients who have done it. Don't tell me we can't, okay? Obviously, there are exceptions. There are people who just have really bad genetics or who can't handle it. So don't do this on your own. I would suggest, working with me or working with a health coach or a doctor if you have type 2 diabetes, because it needs to be highly managed, okay? But it can be done. It can be reversed through diet and exercise, and fasting is one of the best ways to help jumpstart that, all right? The second reason you could lose weight on IF, intermittent fasting, is because it actually boosts your metabolism as well. And then the third reason is that most people will eat less because they're not eating as long. Their windows compress, so they're not going to try and shove all that food in, okay? You get to be uncomfortable if you're going to try and eat 3,000 calories in 6 hours, okay? Reason number 2 why you should try intermittent fasting is that it's really good for the brain, okay? It helps. If you're doing a ketogenic diet, it will actually help introduce ketones to the brain, which is the brain's preferred fuel. And we've actually seen really good outcomes in patients with neurodegenerative diseases such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's really improve their markers. And it can actually help prevent those things from occurring, okay? The brain does really well on fasting. You'll actually notice when you're in a fast, whether it's intermittently or especially an extended fast, towards the end of the fast, you don't even want to eat because your brain just feels so good. You have such intense clarity and focus, and you're just on point. You're on your A game. So it's really good for the brain. Reason number 3 to try intermittent fasting is that it's going to reduce inflammation. All right. That's the hallmark of any good diet, is to reduce inflammation. How does it do that? Well, 2 inflammatory markers we look for in blood work are tumor necrosis factor and interleukin. They've both been proven to go way down after being on a fasting protocol for just a month. So the research is really promising. We need more research, but really promising towards reducing inflammation. That ties into the brain health too. Any inflammation will make the brain not function the way it should. Okay. Reason number 4 to try intermittent fasting is it's actually going to improve your heart health. So heart disease is the number 1 killer in the country, is year after year. So I think it would be a good idea to normalize fasting to help reduce the number 1 killer in the country, don't you think? So how does it work? Well, it helps decrease cholesterol, helps decrease triglycerides and blood pressure, okay? Because when you're doing the fasting, you're giving your body a chance to rest, you're improving that insulin sensitivity, like I said earlier, and then all that inflammation comes down. So whatever is anti-inflammatory is also going to be good for the heart as well, okay? So once again, number 1 killer in the country year after year. I think we should try and normalize fasting for people, okay? Make it so when you say to somebody you're fasting, they don't look at you like you have 3 heads anymore, okay? And the 5th reason to try intermittent fasting is it actually has anti-aging and anti-cancer properties, okay? Pretty wild stuff here. The research is actually indicating that it could have some pretty potent effects. So a study in animals showed that those animals who fasted had an 83% longer lifespan than those who didn't. That's pretty wild, 83%. Another study showed that fasting was just as effective as chemotherapy in reducing tumor size and preventing tumor growth. So really promising stuff there, okay? Cancer, a very simple analogy I can give you is imagine you're playing Russian roulette, okay? Cancer, it proliferates, okay? The more multiplications and more divisions of cells, the better the chances that there's some abnormal cell that will grow and divide and multiply. So it's kind of like playing a Russian roulette. The more you play that game, the more you pull the trigger, the higher your chances are that a bulb's going to come out, or that a bad cell is going to multiply and divide. So by fasting, what we're doing is instead of pulling that trigger hour after hour, meal after meal, what we're doing is we're taking that gun and we're placing it down, and we're not pulling the trigger as much. We're giving the body a chance to heal and regenerate and relax. Okay, obviously that was a very crude example of cancer. I'm not claiming that's how cancer works to the T, but it's a good analogy, helped me kind of wrap my head around how fasting could actually prove to be anti-cancer and prevent cancer, which the research does. If you want to look at it, DM me, I'll send you the research. It's out there, okay? I'm not making that up. All right, guys, so again, in review, the top 5 benefits of fasting. Number 1, fat loss. Number 2, brain health. Number 3, reduces inflammation. Number 4, increases your anti-cancer and anti-aging properties, and then also improves the heart health. All right, guys. Episode 4, it was a pleasure. Thanks for listening. I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, DM me, message me, comment in the comment sections, ask questions. I'm here to help, guys. That's what I'm here to do. Okay? Again, thanks for joining me. Doc Made Diet Podcast, episode number 4, top 5 problems with fasting and the reasons to do that. Go ahead and listen to Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and I'll see you guys next week.